arts, lifestyle. SNS Online. The bark is rough under her hands, scratching at her palms and fingers as she stumbles between the trees. She retches violently, her body jerking and shaking as the convulsions push her forward deep into the clutches of the forest. Copper and bronze leaves dance around as the wind shoves at her, roars like a rushing river. She is aware of everything: breath and heartbeat, colour and sound, the smell of the dank autumnal air, all of it heightened somehow, more vivid, more real. She coughs, chokes in agony, tears streaming down her face as she gasps for breath. "Make it stop," she begs, silently.
Hello and welcome to SNS Online. The Gifts is the latest novel by today's special guest and SNS returnee, Liz Hyder, a magnificently spellbinding tale that juxtaposes ethereal fantasy with the stark brutality of Victorian London. A tale told through 5 different perspectives, exploring science, nature, religion, enlightenment, the role of women in society, and obsessive ambition run amok. Hyder's first book, Bearmouth, garnered a significant number of industry awards, including the Times Children's Book of the Year, and this is her first adult novel. Well, Liz joins me now for the second time. Liz, it's such a treat to get you back on the show. I love The Gift so much. Thank you for your gift to us all in writing it.
Oh, thanks.
There you go.
It's nice to have another chat. I love a chat.
Absolutely. Just to say to people who haven't yet read the book, I see it as a fantasy scenario set in Victorian England, basically exploring female empowerment against all the odds, and the odds include men, naturally, and religious fervour. But both Bearmouth, The Gifts, and your forthcoming work, The Illusions, are all set in the past. Do you enjoy immersing yourself in history?
I do, yeah. And also I think it's really my cunning idea. I'm not the first to do this, right? But I really like the idea of exploring issues that are still relevant and kind of contemporary now, but looking at them through sort of a historic lens. Because the thing is, if I was to write about technology now, for example, by the time I'd finished writing the book, it would probably be out of date, because things are moving so fast. Whereas for like The Illusions, which is my next book coming out in June, that is about technology, really. That's kind of where the idea came from, and it's about early film pioneers and magic and those two worlds kind of colliding. So yeah, I love doing the research as well. I become such a geek for like a really I mean, I'm a geek anyway, right? We know this from last time, but I really love falling down that kind of hole of research, and just you find out the most amazingly interesting weird things. But buttons on The Gifts, I fell down. I had half a day looking at researching buttons. And it's about 2 lines in the entire book. But I had a lovely afternoon.
But I mean, the underbelly of Victorian London is so well written, and you really feel totally immersed in that. I mean, again, that obviously that's research, isn't it?
Oh, I'm really pleased you said that. Yeah, because that's what I sort of try and do. Really, I want that immersive sort of feel, really. That's kind of what I want people to feel when they read the books. You know, some people really kind of love that and get it, and other people really hate it. And that's fine too, because things aren't for everyone. And
it's also interesting that you say that you set things in the past so you can tell contemporary stories, but with a twist to it. And because I'm a big sci-fi fan, so things like Doctor Who and Star Trek quite often would be telling very contemporary stories, but it'd be dressed up in a way that you didn't feel that you're being talked down to or, patronised. And then hopefully people learn more from it.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, like you, I mean, I grew up on kind of, my dad's a big sci-fi fan, and so therefore I'm a big sci-fi fan, as is my brother. My sister less so, but, Star Trek and Doctor Who were like, hugely formative things on TV when I was watching. Also Land of the Giants.
Oh, yeah, fan. I remember that.
And The Invaders, it had a really great theme tune. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Look it up, people. It's very catchy.
I seem to remember he was a bit of a dish for main guy on The Invaders. I can't remember his name now.
I I don't remember. I just remember that like the invaders had like an extra tip on their little finger.
That was it.
The Invaders. A Quinn Martin production. Starring Roy Finnis as architect David Vincent.
I think also as well, like a lot of the things that we're interested in now are still the same things that people were interested in the past. So, you know, like things like equality and being treated fairly and people being given opportunities, all of those sorts of things, being able to kind of live your life and live out your potential, I think they're all still, none of those things are going to go away. They're sort of part of the human condition. And I like looking at it through a historical lens because it is like you say, it's a way of exploring those issues, but in a way that it's just a slightly different spin on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just love the female empowerment and the whole sisterhood element of the thing. Just to explain briefly for people who haven't read it, I would say 4 disparate women from widely different backgrounds fights back against patriarchy of the day with Victorian England. 2 of these women inexplicably sprout wings and become the unwanted focus of attention. And obviously there's elements of Victorian freak show when they used to sort of glue fins of a fish to another animal to make it look like a sort of a weird gestalt creature. And they get exploited by a ruthless surgeon from London who believes he's serving both science and God's purpose. So again, we get the constraints of organised religion coming in there. So there's a lot of elements pulling all this together.
Yeah, there are, and I'll be honest, it was a big research project.
Yeah.
Because the 4 women, like you say, they are all very different. And you know, Edward, who is the surgeon character, obviously I'm not a surgeon. I should explain. Obviously, I'm not from Victorian England. You know, I'm not a surgeon, and so that was a really interesting thing to research. But then my 4 women, one's an artist, and I'm not adverse to getting out my sketch pad and some pens and pencils, but I am also not an artist as well as not being a surgeon. And I'm not a botanist. You know, one of my characters is a botanist. One's a storyteller, so I guess I'm more sort of along those lines. And then the other one is a sort of an aspiring journalist, also something I am not. So yeah, it was a really interesting thing to research, and I did definitely want to play on that idea of. I'm really fascinated by that kind of sort of early mid-Victorian period when you've got Darwin's theory of evolution coming out, and you have that kind of clash between science and religion, and people trying to work out their own kind of personal way through that, and how they justify it and how they negotiate it to themselves. But that passion for collecting, that Victorian thing of collecting and curating and noting, archiving,
dissecting.
And dissecting is part of it. There is that real pursuit of knowledge, but and which is a really, obviously a noble, brilliant thing. But at what cost does that come, really? I was interested in exploring that kind of slightly grey area of what is the morality of those things. What's the morality of killing sort of, hundreds and hundreds of birds, or killing creatures just because you can, even though you know what will happen when you dissect it or when you do certain things. So I find that, I find it a really interesting moral debate, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where does that line lie?
And also what I love is, even though there are magical elements in the story which aren't explained, but you just accept that this extraordinary thing has happened, the magical elements feel believably constrained by the laws of the real world. I mean, the metamorphosis of these 2 women when they sprout these wings is messy and painful. We read a crunching of bones as a change takes place, and these wings can be damaged or even forcibly removed without them magically growing back. So literally, that the only bit of the fantasy side is this one thing. Did you feel that you didn't need to explain the reasons why, or is that another book in the making?
I hint at it. I think that the clues are there if you want to look, and I think, but ultimately, I think it's up to you as the reader to come down and decide what makes them grow. Like I say, I leave clues and I leave hints. But also, when you put a story out into the world, when you do when your imaginary friends, as I like to call them, go out into the real world in a book, it's that they're no longer just your imaginary friends; they're other people's imaginary friends, and so there is no wrong answer. I think it's always really interesting when I sort of do events and stuff, and I ask people why they think the women grew the wings. I get really interesting different answers, some of which align totally with what I think, but also which are completely new and different and beautiful and weird and wonderful in their own way. So there's no kind of wrong answer, really.
I mean, for me, the wings are clearly symbolic and powerfully so. Freedom, strength, sisterhood, escape. And a symbol of female empowerment, really. And I guess because of the emotions that are created in this book by these women, how they're impacted by men mostly, that's how I see the change evolving. Something to do with the earth and mysticism or something like that. So that I go with that flow. But I
love it.
But it would be interesting to. I mean, I'm sure you've got so many ideas. You wouldn't necessarily be wanting to look back at something you'd written already. But it would be interesting to explore the magical elements, or you're not so interested in that?
I sort of feel like I leave the story at a point where it's ended, if you know what I mean. I'm a big fan of an end in a book, like a proper end. I don't like it when you read a book and it just stops, where you're kind of getting towards the end and there are fewer and fewer pages and you're like, mate, you better wrap this up in a satisfying fashion. And then it's not wrapped up in a satisfying fashion. And I don't need a kind of, I'm a big fan of Dickens, but sometimes an end to a Dickens book where he's telling you about what happened to characters that you'd forgotten about because they were in the first third. You're like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember them. I don't necessarily need it to be that kind of wrapped up. Yeah. And I do want an end. And so, I don't think I'd revisit it. I mean, like you say, I mean, for me, the wings are definitely a metaphor for empowerment and for kind of not just sort of empowerment, but that relationship with nature. Both the women who do grow wings do have that kind of, they do have a sort of a closer connection with the wider world, and they do look up and out at it, and they do sort of open their eyes to it. So there's definitely that kind of that sort of element, and empowerment and knowledge as well.
All becomes silent. Not even a solitary bird sings. A weight of something sits behind her, a shadow of a presence. The pain has gone, burst right out of her, drained all her energy too, but something else sits on her shoulders now. Scarlet blood drips down from them onto the back of her hands. She has survived, for now at least, when she feared she might not. Breathless and shivering, she sits slowly back on her haunches, not daring to look behind. The skirt of her dress is sodden with damp autumn leaves, birch and beech, oak and larch. Come, Etta, she says to herself. Come, open your eyes. Whatever it is, the worst must surely be over. Wrung out and exhausted, she edges slowly to her feet, wobbles as she comes to stand. But she has no need to turn her head. The sun emerges from the clouds above, stretching Etta's shadow far in front, taking her breath away with it.
And it's full of vivid imagery and evocative settings. It's a very pacey novel too, I've got to say, Liz. It flies by.
Hooray!
Yay!
Hooray! Good, because, it's really funny. Like, it's always really funny reading kind of people's reactions to books, because some people are like, oh, this is so slow. I just, it's really slow. And other people are like, I read it in one sitting overnight. I didn't sleep. So I just think it's always really interesting because it is a piece of art effectively, and so art is always subjective, and so you're always going to get different reactions to it. I like a book that has got a lot of story in. I'm interested in the characters, I'm interested in the setting, but what I really want is a good yarn. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of the reasons why I do watch a lot of TV and I do read a lot of children's and young adults books as well. Like, I will literally read anything. It's not, I read non-fiction, I read anything, graphic novels. But I just like, one of the reasons why I do love Russell T Davies and Sally Wainwright and Michaela Cole is because they know how to structure and tell a really, really, really good story. And Lucy Prebble I put in there as well. I'm watching I Hate Susie at the moment, which I am just loving. And like Succession as well. There's loads and loads of really good writers around who I don't think necessarily get the credit maybe that they deserve. But inspiration from all of them.
Talking about a sequel to the book, there were two characters that I thought should have had their own run. Would be Mary, who was the journalist, or she's sniffing out a good news story, and she uncovers the truth about this corrupt surgeon who's abusing these women with her friend Richard. And I think them together would make a brilliant, like a series of detective novels set in Victorian England. Again, with the Doctor reference, there's a story that you might even remember called The Talons of Weng Chiang, and there were two amateur sleuths of the sort of Sherlock Holmes sort of vibe, that Big Finish Productions actually gave them about 6 box set of stories on their own without the Doctor, because they were so popular. And I could see Mary and Richard really going for it. I mean, Victorian London is such a wonderful setting for detective stuff.
It is, it really is. I mean, I do love Mary and Richard, and a part of me didn't want to say goodbye to them.
Sure.
Because I had so much fun writing them. But I mean, Richard is there sort of as an ally as well. I think it's important to sort of say that they're, you know, that yes, it's a kind of it's feminist fiction, definitely, but it's also important to show male allies in that. And Richard is very much kind of an ally and a supporter and a champion for Mary, and just a really good friend as well. And I do love him. I'm very fond of Richard. But yeah, they're really good fun together, I think. And there's kind of, you know, good chemistry between them, and there's a lot of kind of fun dialogue. I don't know. I mean, I sort of feel like
you got more ideas too.
I have
too many.
Yeah, I've got too many new ideas. I think, yeah, and I'm not. I don't know. Sometimes I think when writers return to an idea that they did like 20 years ago, I'm not always sure it's the best thing to do. It always makes me slightly feel like they've run out of ideas.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of, you know, an arrogant thing to
No,
say.
not at all.
I'm lucky to have lots of ideas, but I always feel like you write those characters at a point in your life, and then, you know, already, even with The Gift, it's like, you know, a couple of, you know, it came out last year, but for me, I finished writing it the year before that, and I've written, you know, 2 books since. So it's like, I've moved on from those characters. I don't know. I kind of, you know what I'd love fan fiction. I'd love someone to do a Richard and Mary fan fiction. That'd be fun.
Right, that's the homework for me tonight.
That's homework. There you are.
I tell you what, I was thinking a novel about the suffragettes. You could do a cracking one with that. I mean, possibly with some wing sprouting too. And as a personal request, Daleks.
Oh, do you know what? I mean, I would.
No, forget the Daleks. Suffragettes, would be brilliant.
I would love to. I mean, I would, you know, obviously, who wouldn't want to write for Doctor Who, particularly like under like the great god Russell T Davies, as we like to refer to him.
Certainly.
I don't know, suffragettes. It is interesting. I mean, there's been so many books written about it. I think one of the things that I'm always interested in is like what stories haven't necessarily been told, really.
Yeah.
And I feel like the suffragette story can always be told in fresh new ways, but I'm not sure I'd be the best person to do that, really.
Okay.
But yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I sort of have dabbled in it a little bit with the next book, because that's set in 1896, so it's kind of just as that sort of, I guess, what we call the first real wave of feminism is sort of emerging. Yeah, it's interesting.
So tell us about your next book. I mean, obviously we can't have too many spoilers, but I'm intrigued. The Illusions. This is coming out in June.
Yeah, The Illusions. It's set in 1896 in Bristol. And it sort of explores the true world, really, in which the golden age of magic in Britain collides with the really early days of moving images, of cinema. And there is this huge overlap, which is endlessly fascinating, and I can waffle on about in great detail. I'd be great on a pub quiz on magicians and film overlap. But yeah, it tells the story of a young pioneering filmmaker, Edie Carlton, and a kind of hotshot, brilliant young magician, George Perris. It's full of a kind of interesting, intriguing cast of characters across sort of magic and film, and mechanicians and inventors and all sorts. And there's much danger and peril. It's been jolly good fun. It's been jolly good larks. It's a rollicking adventure, I think.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. And just to flag up, but we did in the previous thing, but the Bearmouth was muted to be a film. Is there any development on that?
Yes, a bit. I can probably tell. So they've been working on the script basically. There's a fantastic script writer involved, so they've been working on that. and there are various really exciting people attached to it who I can't tell you about.
That's fine.
And so at the moment, I think they're kind of getting to a stage where they're going to go out for sort of funding for it. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. But I'm always, I don't know, I guess it's kind of like a protective mechanism that I'm always a bit like, well, that's great news, but I sort of believe it when I see it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I still feel like that with books. When I go into the bookshop and the gift is on the shelf, I'm like, oh, it really is there.
Yeah. And how many? So many fantastic reviews as well. I mean, just all across the board, 5-star reviews. It's just so exciting to see where you're going to go next. I can't quite believe you've written 2 books since this one. We haven't even talked about the other one.
Yeah, I mean, well, The Illusions is the one that I've spent more time on because it's an adult book, so it's much longer and it's kind of it's sort of a bigger book, and it's kind of an epic. And then the one that I'm redrafting at the moment actually is a young adult book, which is sort of a coming of age thriller, but it deals with sort of deep time and our relationship with the natural world and all sorts of things, and it's set along the kind of coast of Pembrokeshire. And there are stone circles and weird things that happen, and comets and strangeness. Yeah, it's fun.
Love it.
It's been fun.
I'm so looking forward to reading your next book, and I would recommend The Gifts to anybody and everybody. Liz Hyder, thank you so much for joining us again. And if we could request another little chat with you when your next book comes out.
Well, that would be lovely. I will definitely catch up on that. And I'm off to look up this Talons of Wing Chun spin-off as well. I'm quite excited about that.
Oh yes, it's a Jago and Lightfoot. It's called. Yes, it
is Lightfoot, isn't it? There's a character in The Illusions called Lightfoot.
Oh well, there you go.
I had to. Do you know what? I had to cut him out almost. He is. That's where I got it from. I do remember now. I remember watching the Talons of Wing Chun and thinking Lightfoot would be a great name for a magician.
Oh, I don't think anybody would notice. I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah.
Oh no, it's fun.
It's great. I love it. Nice nod.
Oh, that's where I stole it from.
There you go.
Hark at us. Such nerds.
Liz Hyder, thank you so much.
It is impossible. It cannot be. But there before her stands a winged silhouette. The shadow lifts its arm to its face, and she sees herself, feels herself, as her hand softly touches her own tear-stained cheek, and the birds resume their orchestra. She turns her head, half dazed as if in a dream. And yet, there they are. Russet wings, larger than an eagle's, fanning slowly out from her shoulders. Part of her.